You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.
Hello, all you weirdos. Jim here, and I am joined by a special guest, Matt. How you doing, Matt?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. I asked Matt to join me for this, and we are doing Spider-Man number 11 because he has been a fan of the series and is a bit more of a fan of Spider-Boy than I am, because this is a Spider-Boy issue, and don't hold that against him. We will end up talking about this, and by the end of this issue, I think that a lot of people, including myself, will give Spider-Boy a little more of a chance. I ended up putting the news deal of Spider-Boy getting his own book that's coming in November, and I said, and the joke was, who asked for this? But it was only because in the email it said specifically, you asked for this. I'm like, I didn't ask for anything. I'm too lazy to ask for things. That was pretty much the gist of that. And then people went with it. But all in all, at the end of that video, I said, we'll have to see how this goes. I was wondering if it would be a big thing. And from the reaction, I thought, well, maybe a lot of people are not going to be into the Spider-Boy. But I did read Spider-Man 11, the finale of this Spider-Man book, which came out of nowhere, really. I mean, we were talking about that before. And it is a Spider-Boy issue that really does set up his solo book in November. But we're going to go from here, and Dan Slott's going to have Superior Spider-Man stuff that people are excited for and all that. So I figured let's review this book as a way to maybe talk about Spider-Boy and if he, is a cool enough character to have his own solo book. You think he is, and I might agree by the end of this, because in this, we really do go from the last issue of Spider-Man. If you didn't read it, you ended up having Spider-Man fighting Electro, and Spider-Boy actually saves him. He actually helps him out. And Spider-Boy is excited because he thinks, hey, we're just going to get back together. The gang's back together. Peter doesn't remember Spider-Boy. Spider-Boy was stabbed and erased from the web of life and destiny, and Peter does not remember having a sidekick. Now, in this issue, you have something at the end we'll talk about, but most people are yelling and kind of Peter. Peter is almost everybody else saying Spider-Man doesn't need a sidekick. This is it. You have to stop. And you do get reasons throughout this why Spider-Man wouldn't want a sidekick, but we also get pretty much reasons why maybe he should have one. And basically, this is Spider-Boy saying, but don't you remember me? We did this. Don't you remember me? We did that. And he's trying to convince Peter, yeah, I really was your sidekick, and we did a lot of things. And it's pretty cool. I like the way that you go through this origin. You see that Spider-Man never really did want a sidekick, even when he back in the day, even before Spider-Boy was released. It took a while to have that happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's never been a guy that could have a sidekick. He's too busy. He's got too many things going on. He doesn't have like a base of operations. Where would he live, in his house with him? It's just
even in the issue, you have people, hey, your son's great. It's not my son.
That was
he's like getting
funny.
so
like
upset about, and that was from Aunt May.
Aunt May.
So you have all these things going on, and what this does establish, a lot of things it does actually, but it establishes that Spider-Boy does know Peter Parker is Spider-Man, knows all those secrets, vice versa, and those things. But you did have Spider-Man kind of out of his league here of what to do. He was out of his, comfort zone, and he doesn't think that he's good enough to watch after a little kid. That's why he wouldn't want a sidekick. But he does go, and you see that when he does kind of save Spider-Boy, because Spider-Boy he transforms. He's the Spider Kid, and he can't really control anything. So Spider-Man uses his friends, goes to Daredevil, and Daredevil actually trains Spider-Boy to use his senses in a proper way. And when he does that, Spider-Boy is able to kind of revert, because he's a monstrosity when we first see him. He's got
10 eyes,
fangs,
shaved head.
Yeah, so with a lot of training, and you do end up seeing the training going, and as the training goes, he's getting hair, his eyes are, because he's able to kind of overcome that and hide it. It gives you the play where you're not going to have a monstrosity as a lead character in what would be an all-ages book. I am too. I mean, it's kind of cool. He says at one point, because Peter knows nothing, so he's like, well, what is it that you do? What happens? He's like, yeah, I kind of have everything a Spider character would. My Spidey sense is a little different. It's funny, if you're reading DC stuff, and it's a little more obscure than most DC stuff. City Boy, it almost, because City Boy can touch objects and, I can see what's going on. And what happens with Bailey here is that he can sense things from objects, almost like it's like a clairvoyant type of deal. He can sense, oh my God, this guy's in trouble. This guy did that. This guy did. So it's different. And that's what you really do need. You can't just have Spider-Boy just be a mini Spider-Man. So you do set that up, but also he can monster out, he says, but he doesn't like to do it. I'm like, I kind of want you to do that, a lot. While you look like a monstrosity, that's kind of fun, but we do see how Daredevil was, able to teach him meditation, to kind of overcome this, to use his senses in a good way, and to be able to function with them. And so as they go on their training, they look, I love the idea that you have the narration, and then we fought a bunch of people, not really, crazy villains. It looks like they're fighting the Hand.
They are.
Seems like it's just a straight up diss on Daredevil.
There's like 50 of them. They're like just laying there dead.
And so you end up having a little boy Spider-Man, and Daredevil just beating the crap out of 100 ninjas from the Hand. But in that, you end up where I like the dialogue. I like the sassiness of Spider-Boy in this. And I think the art in this issue is great. And so at this point, you do get that play of, well, what are we going to do now? Now that Spider-Boy is trained, what happens now? And you might have been able to go off with Daredevil, but it seems that Bailey Spider-Boy wants to go with Peter. He does apologize to Daredevil and says, I'm sorry. I know this might, offend you, but I think I need to be with Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And Daredevil is not dumb. And he's like, and it's funny. He's like, you have secrets that you're not telling anybody. And I think that you don't want to be around me because I can sense when you're lying. So that gives you that little intrigue of what might be going on.
Yeah, there's more to it that we don't know about yet, for sure.
Is he actually, a trustworthy narrator even in these tales? Was this exactly how it happened? We may find out down the line that he's skewing it a little to make himself look a little better, possibly, or something really, really bad happened to him. And that's the whole play in this. Peter takes the idea of, I don't want to have to protect the little kid, but I also don't want a little kid to get involved in this because I know I might not be able to protect you. And he uses the whole play. You got stabbed. That's why you were erased from the web of life and destiny. I can't let that happen again. I wouldn't be able to take that. And I do like where Bailey's, he's pretty smart. He's like, well, you were stabbed too.
Yeah, you were stabbed too.
So was Spider-Woman. So was Kane. Like, you wouldn't put them on the sidelines. So why me? And he's like, well, maybe. It's actually that Peter got stabbed, which is pretty funny. But then we go through a lot of this stuff is going to be, let's set stuff up for the upcoming book. Like, hey there, Spider-Boy, how can you walk on walls if you have those cool shoes, those sneakers?
Yep.
Oh, these? Well, Reed Richards made them
Unstable
for me.
molecules.
Dan Slott is poking fun at a lot of things, and it would be something maybe somebody would bring up. But the fact is that Peter originally, when he did first jump and cling to a wall, he's wearing shoes.
Yeah.
So he even makes fun of that, but he says, I got them unstable molecules, and also says, freaking Miles runs around with high
Nobody
tops.
questions that. Yeah, Miles.
It felt a little bit too much meta at points to me, but I did kind of giggle. But it's all fun. And I'll tell you right now, if you haven't read anything of this Spider-Man series, if you haven't read anything with Spider-Boy, you can just read this issue. Everything is explained, almost to a point that if you have been reading things, it might be a little over-explained. It might be a little bit all ages for some people. But if you're into that sort of thing, you want to have fun with a younger character, I think that this is pretty good. And then we get to see him fight some villains. He ends up, Spider-Boy takes down Killionaire, one of now his rogues. He's all happy. I now have a rogues gallery I'm building up, but then gets captured as he's taunting. I mean, and again, I said to you beforehand, I think that you would agree. The reason why I think that he is kind of cool is that idea. This isn't one of those books that we get nowadays that just is here to say, oh my God, Spider-Boy can do everything. Spider-Boy is the greatest. He does nothing wrong. He actually skipped school. Actually, at this point, he thinks that he's so good that he ends up not even paying attention and kind of, throwing it back at Peter. Peter's saying, get off the streets. You can't be out there alone. There is a hit out on you. Killionaire's pissed. He put a hit out on your life. And Spider-Boy's like, oh, that's awesome. I actually have a villain, as he's trying to get free food because of who he is. So this isn't that, put him up on a pedestal and lessen things. I think that a lot of people were afraid that a Spider-Boy would only be elevated by lessening
it's not like that
Spider-Man. It's not at all.
No.
So I give Dan Slott credit there. And again, I didn't even say it at the beginning. I'm not a huge Dan Slott fan. As a person, I think he's kind of a jerk. He's blocked me on Twitter twice now. That's how bad I am. I got blocked twice by Dan Slott. But in the meantime, he's writing this kind of in a cool way that I think that some people will be able to get behind. But he ends up getting captured by this person who's going to try to collect on this hit. It ends up being Arcade, and it's fun. You end up, Peter has to come save him. Oh, my God, this is why, this, that, and the other thing. And the whole play of it, though, is that you end up where Peter spells out that Spider-Boy is not allowed to fight the big villains. That's why we would never have heard stories about, hey, that time when you took down Carnage, Spider-Boy wouldn't have been included.
No.
But Arcade is even a little bit above what Peter thought Spider-Boy's level was. But after they both take out these instant androids that come out of these funhouse mirrors and have a fun play, they end up where he says, well, I'll put Arcade on your list of villains that you can fight.
Earned it, kid.
It's also that play that you realize here, and Peter realizes. Again, this is what happened in the past, right? So he realizes, though, that Spider-Boy didn't have a great life. He actually was having fun in Murder World because he's never been to an amusement park. And
that was
Peter
pretty
had
sad.
to convince him, right? He's like, this is Murder World. You don't want to love Murder World. And he's like, well, I never was that. And it's so funny because as they get ejected from Murder World and go out, they go into a sewer pipe that leads out into the East River, right?
Gross.
And he loved it. He thinks this is the log flume. This is a water park to him. And he's like, this was the greatest. He's like, man, you really have some problems if you think going into the East River is a great time. And throughout this, we're going to go these flashbacks and then go back to Spider-Boy, who at this point is hanging upside down because Peter ended up webbing him to the wall. And Spider-Boy's trying to convince Peter, I was your sidekick. And then even says at one point, but I was your friend. And he says, I took a lot of time. I put a lot of effort into that. Me and you were together. And Peter ends up realizing, because of all the different gadgets and stuff that you have Spider-Boy still have. At one point, Bailey breaks away from the webbing that was holding him against that wall. And Peter says, there's no way you're strong enough to do that. And he says, I had dissolving web fluid that you gave me. And that is what seems to really then convince, because at this point, it's still Peter trying to figure out if all this was real. But then they're sitting there, and you do even have Spider-Boy end up like taking Peter down. But in a way, there's no way Peter's going to fight back.
No, it's like a playful way, like a 10-year-old would do.
Again, if people could point and say, oh, look, that was where he up. No, it was him, first off, surprising Peter. And even then, Peter says, did you make this fluid? And he's like, I'm 10 years old. I can't make anything. You gave it to me. And he says, yeah, this looks like mine. But then they're talking about, the big adventure and how all this went bad and all that. And you end up where Peter says, you got one last shot. Give me this other story. That's all it is. It's like a clip show. And then he's like, okay, here we go. And it is kind of fun. Peter's like, did we fight the Sinister Six? No. Red Goblin? Not even close. Galactus? I'm like, really? Galactus? And he's like, no, the big wheel. The big wheel. Ooh. And then they show it where in this play, this gyroscopic wheel that the big wheel is going on, Peter has a device, but he needs Spider-Boy to use it. And Spider-Boy ends up messing up. He button mashes. He's like me playing Street Fighter. He's just mashing.
Well, Peter acted like he needed to be a scientist to operate this thing. He's 10 years old. He can't do this.
And that's the fun play of it, is at the end, Peter realizes that, I think in the background he realizes maybe I gave him a little bit too much to do. But while the wheel was going, it's heading right for Feast with Aunt May. And Spider-Boy jumps and saves Aunt May. Now, I'm guessing that 10 other people died, but that's just me. But Aunt May was saved. He's like, oh, thank God. But he does end up saying, you thought of somebody else's life. You ended up saving Aunt May. And that was the big play. And this ends up it ends up convincing Peter enough in the here and now that Spider-Boy is okay. We'll look into it. He's going to have his own solo book, that sort of thing. So he does, agree with them. And then we end with a fun deal of Spider-Boy touching a shirt. It's like, oh my God, the guy who owns the shirts, he's in danger. Gutterball is after him. And like, okay, you get some fun. We're going to have goofy rogue Spider-Boy will end up fighting some, goofy characters. But the big play in here that I said at the beginning, you end up where Spider-Boy says, me and you were friends and I need a friend. And he says, I get it. You're right. Spider-Man doesn't need a sidekick, but this sidekick really needs a Spider-Man. And then Peter says, okay, you got me. Yep. You win. Let's go get Gutterball. And they fly off to do that. And it's fun. There's nothing very serious about this. There's some feels, though. I realize that there is some things with this character that I could get behind. It still may not be really a book for me, but if there's people, I had more fun reading this issue than I had of any Zeb Wells Amazing Spider-Man. That is pretty much my main thing here, that this was more fun than anything. And if you want fun, some people don't. I think that maybe you should give Spider-Boy a look, but, you liked it way more than me, right?
I think the character's cool. I think it's a concept that it's weird that it's never been talked about in the past. Did Spider-Man ever have a sidekick ever? No. So it's just interesting.
I think that the surprise of it and how it seemed forced, and using it makes sense with the Web of Life and Destiny.
Yeah, it's a good time to introduce them when things were unclear and mysterious. So
I just wonder if it's, how much of the hate is because of Dan Slott, because I don't like the guy, but also how it seems forced. In this time, you're always trying to, or they're always trying, the big two at least, are trying to get these younger characters, legacy stuff. But this, after reading this issue, doesn't feel like that. Doesn't feel as forced as some other things, though I know Marvel will force the crap out of it by the end because they're really going to push it.
If this was in the next Into the Spider-Verse movie, he would be the most popular character, for sure.
I said that about legacy and stuff. I think that it doesn't even go that far. I think that at this point, and the point where it's announced, oh my God, Spider-Boy is going to have a book, we have been inundated with so many nonsense Spider characters. There's so many that when you get Spider-Boy, people just rolled their eyes. Oh, here we go again. I mean, what is this? Just like the Disney singing Spider-Man? Or is this like there's so many of them. And I do think that after this issue, I see, what? Spider-Boy might have a better thing going for him than some of those others that did just end up getting thrown out, most of which seemed to be just to tick off, a checkbox here and there. But at the end of this issue, I'm like, all right, I like it enough to give it a try. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I really did like the art. What would you give it?
I'm going to give it a 9. I do. I think that I'm happy to see Slott writing a new character. He's really good on Spider-Man. We got
You've been one of the bigger
Spider-Man coming up.
supporters of this Spider-Man book that you kept telling me to read it.
I think it's a good alternate to the other Amazing Spider-Man. It's more fun.
Yeah, that's what it seems. And This is the last issue. So it's over. It's going to go with the next thing we're going to have is Superior Spider-Man Returns, then Superior Spider-Man and Spider-Boy in November. So we'll have to wait a little bit for that. And I think that even with the name, because people were getting confused between Amazing and just Spider-Man, I know that that's been a thing all along. You have different versions of different things, Friendly Neighborhood, all that. But I have had people where when the recent annuals came out, because they came out kind of a week after each other, and people were getting them all confused. They were reading the Spider-Man annual and going, I don't know what Zeb Wells, and it wasn't even this. No, it was all over the place, right? It was so wacky.
It's completely different. Yeah.
Having the Superior deal on it, I think will do well too. And people love Superior Spider-Man. There's some that hate everything, but still, but a little more positive. Now, had you on to be more positive, and now people will give me shit because it's more positive, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But thanks for joining me, Matt. Yep. Hopefully you'll join me for some other things as well. And thanks everybody for listening. Let us know what you think in the comments below as always, but we'll talk to you all later.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.